her. So this year, the exceptions are the rape victims. And Sharon's story is part of that message, that these exceptions deserve life as well. So Sharon, I am so grateful you're here. She's been working on her presentation, and she's got a special surprise at the end. So, Sharon.
Thank you for having me. So, I had this whole speech planned out. The videos were sent in, the slides, it was done. I was ready for the summit. Everything was great. Then, subsequently, I rewrote it 20 times. Prior to sending it in, right? And then immediately, the day after, I wake up in the middle of the night, and I feel like the Lord's going, wait, no, maybe let's not go that way with it. And I thought, well, but I've already turned it in, And it was one of those moments where, you really want to make sure when you get the opportunity to stand in front of people, to share a beautiful story like this, you want to be able to know that the day will come when you can stand before your Father in heaven and him say, well done, good and faithful servant. So I decided I was going to listen. And so how that played out was he continued to say, let's do this and let's do this. The whole day I'm packing to come here. So this script is completely different than the original one. But, it was like if he were the ultimate authority in the intercom situation of an office in heaven going, Sharon, change this. Sharon, change this all day. So this is what we have. The first should be last, right? Last will be first. So you guys are getting the last one that was written. I had a plan. God had another plan. Similarly, when the enemy means something for evil, our Creator can transform it to good, right? He can take a bad situation and turn it into a good one, just like the reason that I'm here speaking with you today. So I was going to use slides, statistics on rape-related pregnancy, something called reproductive coercion, and variable other statistics relating to abortion. However, it doesn't matter how many slides you show, It's really, that's not the argument that the Lord wanted me to focus on. Besides the fact that you were coming up here, so I figured you'd probably give them statistics. You'd be the left brain conversation.
Yes, right.
That's it.
I love it.
That's exactly right. So with that said, the Lord wanted me to take this in a different direction. But there are a few original pieces still here. And I did put a lot of work and time into the original, so I will put that on my website later this week. But we all know about the refiner's fire, right? The refiner knows the valuable material he's working with, right? When he sees his reflection in it, right? All the impurities are burnt out of it. That's when it's ready. Silver, gold. That only happens after that fire's been burning on that material, whatever it is, for a long period of time. So, and the same is true with diamonds. They have to be under tremendous pressure. So if you were that diamond, or if you were that material, that gold or that silver, that wouldn't feel very good, would it? That'd be pretty painful. Well, neither do fiery trials and fierce trials that we have in our life. But he never said it would be easy. He just said we'd never go through it alone. And where your trials may not look like my trials, it doesn't negate the fact that we all have them. And Lamentations 3 is a great example of trauma and hope, right? Especially verses 22 and 23. And they were just assigned to me last week in one of my papers for one of my Bible classes. And it was perfect timing, I thought. So if we could look at slide 1. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Can we all say this together? The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies are come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Now just sit in that for a minute and just breathe that in. Doesn't that just feel good, knowing that every day when you wake up, no matter what you're going through, he is always steadfast. He is always faithful. No matter what you're going through, and his mercies are new every morning. So we trust that same loving, steadfast, faithful God in the face of the greatest of adversity to the best of our abilities. And when our ability isn't enough, we as brothers and sisters in Christ should rally around each other to help each other be lifted up. right? In tragedy or dismay. Why? In this arena right now, what we're talking about, when it comes to life, the topic we're discussing today, it is a miracle no matter where it comes from, period. An instantaneous, miraculous event that alters the life of every person it touches. And we clearly see that's not respected anymore, don't we? Not everybody feels the way we do about this, but they should. And what that still small voice kept urging in my spirit was on his rewrite of the speech to focus on that instead of statistics, to acknowledge the healing that a child brings going through a traumatic event like that. Not that it's a reminder of what happened, rather it's a remarkable source of healing. Nobody's focusing on that. So let's view this through a different lens. If you go to war or you're in a battle, you have scars, right? So if you're drafted, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You're going, period. That's the end of it. And don't come for me because I'm not against fighting for your country. I'm from a family of military people, but I'm just saying, it's not like you have a choice. You're gonna go, you're gonna come back. Chances are you're probably gonna have PTSD, right? You have PTSD if you go through what I went through. Same difference, right? With the military, however, they give you medals, you can hang them on your wall. They're valuable treasures that you have that you can pass down for generations. They're forever special, right? I was able to give my dad his father's medals when I retrieved them from a family member, and I'll never forget the look of gratitude on his face. And while you can't really hug medals, although I'm pretty sure he did when I gave those to him, you know, it's not the same thing as when your child looks at you with a smile on their face. You know, your medals you can't hold your hand, can't say, I love you, or give you a kiss. None of those things can happen with a medal. But when you go through something like this, that's going through a war, that's going through a battle. You're having to overcome trauma, just like all trauma is trauma. You know what I'm saying? So if you are blessed enough to have the opportunity to have a gift from God that allows you to heal, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Because the reality is that the child is a reminder of what you've overcome, inexplicably far beyond any medal, Medal of Honor, Purple Heart. There are names that Tammy Kale, if she's hearing this, I'm talking about her, Rebecca Kiesling, Ashley Lawton, my daughter, Angelica Grace, just to name a few. And I know there are countless other little crowns of beauty walking around, fighting for others like themselves. Mothers like the ones I've met here, Sarah Mays, and I'd love for every mom with a similar origin story or children like mine to reach out and let me know, because I feel pretty confident you'd be really hard pressed to find anyone like me or my friend Sarah that could say, I regret my choice. I shouldn't have had my child. I really don't think it's possible. Now, what started in fear, possibly even the fear of death, turned out to bring an Imago Dei moment of the infinitely miraculous creation of life, right? So here's a little contribution I thought I'd share from I have two favorite pastors, and one of them is Matt Chandler. And so here's what he had to say on this subject.
Wondered what happens to them when they die. Now, they don't want to die. That's instinctual. Death is unnatural in this world. It was introduced by sin and the fall. All creatures know death is unnatural. All creatures will fight against death. But it's been given to us and us alone, this moral and spiritual aptitude. So again, the way I work is I start pulling this thread. This is how every sermon series that's ever been preached here begins. Some random morning in the kitchen like that. And so I began to pull, and here's what I began to see. By the way, this is for free. This idea of the Imago Dei, this distinctly Judeo-Christian doctrine, is the foundation of any talk of human rights and of equal rights ever. It was non-existent in the world until Jesus burst onto the scene. You do work, all right? Anytime somebody talking about equal rights or human rights, they're rooting themselves in fiction narrative and in this idea of people are made in the image of God. You can't argue equal rights outside of this understanding. What would you base it on? You ain't got nothing to base it on. It was non-existent in human history. It is distinctly Christian. And I'm just going to keep arguing. The big mess we're in is everybody wants the kingdom but doesn't want the king. It's not going to work that way. So let me get back to my sermon.
So I think we can all agree with that, right? And the truth is that, just like you were talking about, that they can feel pain, then they're obviously a human. And why don't their rights matter? So from the moment that child is the spark of creation, the spark of life, they're a person. Just because you can't see them except under a microscope doesn't make it any different. So there's a book. Let me share a little story with you. When I was pregnant with Angelica Grace, I attended a Messianic Christian home group with my parents on Wednesdays. And there was a lady that brought a book to me one Wednesday called Sexual Assault, Will I Ever Feel Okay Again by Kay Scott. And if I'm being honest with you, I only read one chapter in the whole book. And it was called, What About Abortion in the Case of Rape? She had multiple different stories in there of different women and their different choices that they made. And the only two that stayed with me, one was a woman who chose to have an abortion. And I have to read this because what I want to say won't come out as right as if I don't read it, because abortion is very painful. But as a victim, a perpetrator made her a victim, right? However, as the one walking into an abortion clinic was not a victim created, what does that then make this poor girl who has already suffered one tragedy? Now she suffers two. Think about this from the emotional context. She must live with further pain because she now has further damaged her own self. So that's tragic. Then you have another case. This is the other one, stay with me. The woman decided to give the child up for adoption. She was adopted by a wonderful, loving family. Later in life, went and sought her birth mother out. Her story resonated with her so deeply, she started an organization called Fortress International. That's beautiful. That's beauty for ashes. That's totally Isaiah, right? The scripture in Isaiah, coming to life right before you. And maybe that's what this is about, is taking tragedy and making it a triumph. So the problem, I think, and I want us to all kind of take this to heart when we hear stories about these, or if we come in contact with people that have gone through a rape or some kind of sexual assault and they're pregnant, to keep this in mind or maybe advise the people in their lives. The problem with this narrative on shame and the emotional and psychological damage is that the dialogue, the narrative needs to shift. You're already filled with so much shame as it is that you can't get past that and think it's okay to move forward with a baby because now you think everybody's gonna shame you because you had a baby from this. It's helping them see a whole different picture. No. That happened to you, but you can take control back. Someone took all of your control. They made you helpless. But this is a way for you to go, no, I can make something brand new. I can take some of my dignity back. I can bring life into this world, and I can make a difference by allowing this child to live. And every day, looking at that child and just being filled, you know what? When you look at your kid, don't you sometimes just feel, you're so filled with love, your head could explode, right? Sometimes. I mean, I didn't even begin to start healing. I was still struggling with bitterness and resentment because of the whole investigation and how that went until the moment I held her in my arms. And it was like it just melted off of me. It was just unbelievable. And isn't that how God works? So to the pro-choice folks, I say, you know, you made a choice. Everybody keeps saying, you know, keep your hands off my body. You know, well, somebody's hands are already there. We wouldn't be talking about this. So, you know, maybe you should think about just having some morals maybe. But that's not the narrative that we need to have on this topic, because when I was preparing this speech, I was thinking rape survivor, you know, everybody says rape survivor, but we did. My daughter and I survived the trauma of rape, but we're victorious and we're triumphant. That's not a survivor, that's a victor. With that said, it doesn't matter what color you color it, it doesn't matter what filter you put on it, how you try to justify it. There's no degree of semantics that will allow wrong to be right in the taking of life, period. It's just that simple. In a world where everyone wants to complicate everything, this is one of the most simple things to address. Abortion is wrong, abortion is murder, abortion robs the life of a life, period, the end. Are you supposed to bring support and care about young women who choose life and survive an event? Yes, we are. So we should be mindful of that. And we keep getting this pushback right from the left. You guys just want to do this till they have the baby and then nobody's there after that. I'm sure you guys have heard that, right? And to that I say they need to do more research, because I think we do support our girls, don't we? And so we need to show them, here's the only thing that I've seen is that for this particular type of situation with children from rape, those moms do need some more help as far as therapy or counseling. That's a really traumatic event, so let's embrace them a little bit more. But I went to the South Carolina Medical Affairs Committee and spoke to them. And then I was asked to come back and speak on the voting, and I got attacked, by some of those people, some of those pro-lifers. And it was just crazy how people that, knowing your situation, knowing what you went through, and then they're still, it's like, wow, your brain is broken a little bit, isn't it? I'm sorry for you, but unless you've walked a mile in my shoes, let's not do that, because they didn't go through what I did, but I also have one of the greatest gifts in the world. And isn't that how every mom feels about her kids? Right? So how could anybody going through trauma not feel like that if they gave their child a chance at life? So with that being said, I would like to share the Senate video with you guys. I am a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, a student. I am many things. However, of the many things I am not, no woman should ever have to stand before a panel of people and introduce herself as a rape victim or a survivor of rape or abuse. And yet I stand before you today as that woman, not only as a rape survivor, but the mother of a child, a daughter, that was born from said violation of my human rights. And she is here with me today. My beloved miracle. I tried to practice this, not do that. What I've said about her the whole of her life is that she is the personification of the scripture in Isaiah about beauty for ashes, and she embodies that. So thinking about a child conceived from something like this, can you imagine how she would have responded when she found out? I'm sure that probably swirls around in your head. What would a girl say? How would she have responded? How would that impact her self-image? Do you know what she said? With tears in her eyes, she said, "Thank you for giving me a chance at life." And a chance at life. Doesn't everyone deserve that? So the thing that we need to think about here is, are we giving everyone a chance at life? When we make these options available for people, even under these circumstances, are we talking to these people, the victims, our abortion clinic, saying, do you know what else can happen? You've already been traumatized. You will be further traumatized by what you're doing to yourself. You're creating another victim. I am the victim, I am the survivor, and I'm the one that's standing before you telling you this. I would have been so much more traumatized, so much more damaged, if I didn't have this little girl. Please stand up, Angelica. If I didn't have this girl right here, and all of the miraculous things that she's brought into my life, and all of the lives of the children that she's impacted and changed, it's just an amazing, beautiful thing to see how God can take ashes and make such beauty, tragedy transformed into triumph. And that's what this is about, because the voiceless lives growing inside of a mother can be a victim or a survivor, and it's within your power to make that decision. Thank you. Now, I'm going to be real honest here and real candid, and I've never talked about this publicly, but I want to share part of the story that I haven't shared before publicly. My decision to keep my daughter, because it neglects part of the story And the other biological counterpart to my daughter's DNA was not the only perpetrator that night. There was another with a powerful sedative in tow to make all of it possible so that I was in a catatonic state, going in and out of mental consciousness, but unable to even move an eyelid. So I was not 100% sure what my daughter was going to look like. I already had a son, the same ethnicity as me. Now I had no idea what to expect, but I just knew God wouldn't do that to me, is what I kept saying. God wouldn't give me a biracial child when I already had one of another ethnicity and have the judging eyes of society condemn me for something that wasn't my fault or her fault from such a traumatic experience. Truthfully, why should it matter anyway? It shouldn't, but the world was very different in Charlotte, North Carolina in the 90s and around the turn of the century. So my fears were realized for years when women in public restrooms and public places would give me the most appalling glares and repugnant looks when I'd be out with my son, Joey, and my daughter, Angelica. Add that trauma on top of the trauma I already had through an investigation. How unkind, right? But she had a reason for being here. She almost died at birth. The cord was wrapped around her neck 3 times. She had Erb's palsy from the birth trauma and clearly wasn't breathing when she was born. She had 30 seconds before she was going to sustain brain damage and was never supposed to have full use of her arm. In fact, they said she might have some, but never full. Basically, just to be prepared, your kid's going to be handicapped, right? Well, this isn't in here, but I'm just going to tell you. So I was like, no. I was like, Lord, when I realized that she was biracial, knowing that the world was going to be unkind, I was like, Lord, listen here, let's have a talk. Because then that meant she was conceived from rape for sure. And my gynecologist told me it was from the incident, but I just didn't know. I didn't know what flavor I was going to have. Chocolate or vanilla, And I really pleaded with him and just believed by faith. I took her to some prayer meetings and I believed by faith he was going to heal her arm. And you know what? He healed her arm. So I remember going back to the pediatrician, a couple months later, and I was like, remember how you said that her arm she'd never have full use of her arm, and my sister was with me on the end, Angelica was laying on the bed behind me. I'm standing in front of her, all like this on the bed. He comes in there and I'm like, well, watch this. And I scooted over and I was like, well, I got an opinion from a physician on a higher authority. And she's back there going like this. And he's like, he's like, that's a miracle. I'm like, yeah. So, God uses everything, right? That was an awesome story. I love that. So anyway, he likes to show off, right? He can do that. He's God. So I'm cool with that. Now, if I would have aborted her, none of these stories would exist. So to God be the glory, right? And you know what? I'm very grateful that I was here to be able to share these stories with you because it's the first time that I have spoken publicly about the rest of the story. And it's kind of a big deal to do that. So thank you for allowing me the space to do that. And for me, this is big that I'm no longer, the Senate was the first time. So that was the first time that I was no longer silent about publicly speaking about the rape itself. But today is the first time I've actually given the details that there was more than one there were 2 people that were involved. And, that's really hard. But do I look like I feel shame? Do you know why? Because of Jesus Christ. Because of the Holy Spirit and his love for us. And I don't have to feel shame. I didn't do it. It wasn't my fault. And that healing. This little girl, I'm sorry I keep calling you that. But she's going to be 26 next week. And it's been therapy for 26 years. And this is what healing looks like. And I want other people to know that. Can I introduce her? Would you like to meet her? Angelica Grace, ladies and gentlemen.